Hello everyone. Today we're going to get started with an introduction to GraphQL. GraphQL is a query language for your API. It's a replacement for the typical RESTful HTTP type of APIs, as well as providing an integrated query language and documentation for your APIs. It was originally developed by Facebook, and one of their motives was to create a very efficient API layer for mobile, because the transactions are pretty low cost, especially in terms of data usage. So let's jump right into it. In their Getting Started guide, they have a great example for JavaScript, and it kind of steps you through how to make a Node.js app that's a simple hello world. So here you have your requirements. You're going to do an npm init and an npm install. So I'll take those and run them in the terminal with you. I've already run this once, so it should just pass right through. Okay, great. So that's something that I would see. You'll see a different message. And really what you'll want to do is jump to the next page right away, which is running an Express GraphQL server. So this will have something that exposes and binds itself to a port, so that way you can hit it in your browser or from the command line. So I've already copied and pasted the example code they have into my Atom text editor. And just to go through this line by line to make sense of it, the first 3 lines are importing Express SDKs. So we have Express and Express GraphQL. And we're also making our build schema right off the bat. And a schema is just going to define the appropriate arguments or structure to your query language. So in the case of our hello world scheme, we only have one argument, which is hello, and the value for that argument is of type string. And here we're defining a resolver, and the function that we're defining is the function hello. And this is a simple function. All it does is return the string hello world. And here on line 19, we're initializing our Express server. We're calling it app, and we're creating an endpoint here, similar to a route in Flask if you've used Flask before. And the endpoint is going to be /GraphQL. The schema we're going to adopt is the schema we defined above on line 6. And I guess I don't have Vim installed. We're also going to pass in this argument called GraphIQL, which is the interactive browser plugin for GraphQL, and that'll give us a kind of a GUI to play around with, as well as to look at the documentation. And we're taking this a step further, and we're going to Dockerize our Express app. So that means it's going to be running in a Docker container. So that way you can port this to any VM or host or whatever that's running the Docker engine. This is probably the simplest Docker file you've seen ever. The base OS that we're starting from is Node 7. It's running off of the Alpine OS, which is very lightweight. We're going to copy all of the code in our current directory to /app, set /app as our working directory, and then just run the command to execute our Node.js script. And if you're not familiar with Docker Compose files, just make it a little bit simpler for you to run your container in a repeatable manner. You can define your command line arguments here. Some important things for us are the build step. We're building from the Docker file in the current working directory, as well as binding the host port 4000 to the container port 4000. So if you look at my running containers, I already have one that's running, and I'm going to bring it down with the command docker compose down. So it's stopping our GraphQL server. In your case, you won't have any processes running, but just for the sake of this demonstration, I want to start from fresh. And now the steps you would take to run this for the first time are to do a docker compose build. Oops, just docker compose build. And so we're building our web service that we've defined in there, and it's just executing our Docker file. And so we have this image that we've built at the end of it. And then to run that, we're going to do a docker compose up and -d for daemon mode. So it's going to be running in the background. Great. And now if we run docker ps one more time, we can see that our GraphQL image is running. It's been up for 2 seconds, and it's binding to our localhost 4000. So if we come over into our browser and we go to localhost, and then remember our endpoint that we defined as GraphQL, and we'll go ahead and hit that, and then right away we can see our query is hello. Over here on the right, we have a documentation explorer. It tells us the valid root endpoints. So we have query, and the fields that it accepts are hello. And you can even click into these a bit further, and it'll describe to you what a string actually is if you're not familiar with the data type already. So let's go ahead and execute that. And here we see our response of hello. It returns the data of hello and hello world. And it works just as expected. So I hope this was helpful for you to get started with Express. This session will be recorded and uploaded to ASCII Cinema, and the code will be posted in the description below.